Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hump Day Hotline over on the Overreaction Network, powered by Believe. It is the one and only. It's your boy JSpencetheKing, and I am back. I'm excited to be back for another season, and my partner in crime, Joe, isn't with me today. He's sipping whiskey somewhere without me and without Bruce, but tonight I am excited to have a special guest, somebody who has been like a mentor of mine in this content creation space and talking about the Buffalo Bills. I'm excited for the man that really needs no introduction, Mr. Exclusive himself, Mr. Bruce Nolan. What's up, man?
Dude, it's good to be here. You may have oversold me just a little bit, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that Hump Day will persist, and I'm happy that I get to be a part of it.
Yeah, you know what? And I feel bad. Actually, I'm happy. Everything that you said, I'm in agreement with. But every year, normally, you and I do like a quarterback ranking and a coach ranking. And this year is the first year since I started doing content that I unplugged like completely. Like I kind of like stopped tweeting. I stopped doing everything. And then I forgot to come back and do the things that we normally do on the regular annually. So we'll have to kind of figure that out and maybe schedule that at some point soon. And but we're here now. We cut down day, so it's a day that everybody has something to talk about. And I figure, what better way to do it than to enter this season with you? You know.
I'm happy to be here. And one of the things I like about Cut Down Day is that every NFL team has at least one little micro story, because even the beat writers who follow the team, they're there at practice and they do their own 53-man roster projections. Inevitably, they get one or two things wrong anyway. And that's the best part of this whole thing, is that if you've been following and if you've been paying attention, it's not like you're going to get 10 wrong. I mean, unless you're just blatantly ignoring everything you're seeing in practice and the preseason, who's playing with what. It's not like anybody thought, well, Zach Davidson's going to be TE3 and Tylen Grable's not going to make the squad, and Marquez Valdez Scantlin's going to get cut, but Tyrell Shaver and KJ Hamler are probably both going to make it. And, maybe we'll cut Mac Hollins. And like, no one's doing that, right? I mean, let me rephrase. No one reasonable is doing that. And so because of that, you always end up with two or three kind of micro stories, and every single franchise has them. So it just creates this massive buzz around the entire league, rather than just, oh, well, this one team made this splash. This one team, it's a little bit like draft day. The entire league is buzzing about something.
Well, well, let me ask you this then, because I think in Buffalo, obviously, we're buzzing about quite a bit. There's a lot of things that I feel like there's conversations that's being circled around Western New York right now. So the first one I think is pretty much the obvious one. I think in Buffalo, and I fall victim to this every year, because obviously you fall in love with these guys. You watch them more than you watch somebody else. So you kind of root for people when you want someone to make it, and then they don't, or whatever may happen, right? But this year, no one has claimed any of the players that the Buffalo Bills have cut. Now, that doesn't mean that the Bills have cut players that aren't good. And, we're not going that direction. But what I'm asking you is, where is there a surprise there? Is there a surprise? I think PFF rated Frank Gore Jr. the highest rated running back of the preseason because of that game. And then, there's all these different things. Are you shocked that no one got picked up elsewhere?
No. I mean, every single time we go through this exercise, like 1,148 players, in that area end up getting cut. And when that happens, of that, like between 10 and 20 get picked up. So between like 0.6 and 2% of the players end up getting picked. Like, it's not common. Now, the Buffalo Bills have been stacked enough that they've had at least one claimed the last couple of years, which didn't happen this year. But that easily could have been broken last year or the year before or the year before. It's just, you're dealing in such incredibly small numbers that it's not something I spend meaningful time worried about, because of those players that got claimed elsewhere, are we kicking ourselves for any of them? Like, can you think of any players over the last 5 years that the Buffalo Bills have cut at cutdown day? They were exposed to waivers, or if they were vested veteran, they immediately became a free agent. They signed somewhere else, and here we are going, oh, I can't believe that happened.
No, but emotionally, I can say that as a fan base, we typically do it every year. We did it with Duke Williams. We did it. Like there's guys that you root for that you kind of want it to happen. So I think from that perspective, but realistically, no, I don't think so. It's just something that, because looking from the outside looking in this year for once, because like I said, I wasn't nearly as active in content. I got a lot of catching up to do in the next week and a half before the season starts. So with that being said, it's like the things that I was able to kind of see from a distance this year, it seemed like there were a lot of guys that people were rooting for. Shavers, was a wide receiver that everybody kind of, for a while, it's like we were excited about him, and then it kind of disappeared in conversation. Then there was conversation about someone else, and then Shorter got released. So I just think from that perspective, you look at it and it's like, you know, it, you fall in love, but it's just not quite the same as you like you mentioned. Last year and years prior, we did have a little bit where those guys got picked up. But this year, let me ask you this, because I was about to say something and I don't want to just make statements because I haven't been up on things. The general consensus with people that I speak to now is just that the overall talent level, and not just the wide receiver room, but the overall talent level of this roster is not the same. So with the 53 man right now, the initial 53, what position group overall for you is your biggest concern? Because wide receiver, some would say, with not having Steph and Gabe, and then you figure backup position for Josh. But really, if Josh gets injured, it doesn't matter who we have back there. Our season's pretty much not going to be a good thing. So what position group for you is your biggest concern when you look at this initial 53?
I think it's edge rusher. I think it's wide receiver. And then in a distant third, I think it's safety. So for me, edge rusher is right there at the top because everything is an if with the edge rusher group. So let's work our way backwards. Let's start with an output, and then you tell me back what the input's going to be, right? So the output is the defensive edge rushing group absolutely kills it this year. That's the result. The output is they kill it. What do you think the input was? Do you think the input was, well, Von Miller bounced back, right? Became a stud again. Gregory Rousseau took a step. AJ Epinesa took a step. Dwayne Smoot found, himself really significantly removed from injury now, right? We're 2 years now down the line from, like, think about all the ifs that have to happen for that to happen. Mm-hmm. I just said a 35-year-old pass rusher has to magically regain form. Greg Rousseau has to hit a level we haven't seen him at yet consistently. AJ Epinesa has to take a next step, although we have a sample size of him being good, but not amazing. Dwayne Smoot has to reach a level he hasn't reached since he got hurt, but he was a perfectly passable player, right? But think about all the things we just said have to happen. All that stuff has to happen. What about having a day 3 rookie in Javon Solomon, like, break out immediately? Like, all these things could happen, but none of them are like massively high probability functions. Like, if Von Miller did it, you go, wow, that's cool. Man, didn't know if that was going to happen, right? If Gregory Rousseau breaks out, you go, whew, man, good timing for that to show up. If AJ Epinesa becomes like a really strong, like, DE2, we're like, okay, yeah, man. I mean, I'm not going to complain. I'll take it. Now think about all those things have to happen for you to have a dominant defensive line rustling the pasture from the edge. Like, that's a lot of ifs. So for me, I start with defensive end, specifically edge rusher. Now we go to wide receiver and you go, okay, if every single player performs as what the sample size would say that they are, right? No one takes a step forward. Let's assume that again, right? Matt Collins is a perfectly reasonable top 4 target in the NFL, right? No one's going to think he's a 1. I don't think he's a number 2, right? But he's a perfectly reasonable top 4. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, top 4 guy. Don't want him as number 1. Don't want him number 2. Probably don't want him as number 3, to be honest. But top 4 guy, right? Khalil Shakir, highly efficient in small sample sizes. Let's think he can continue to grow. Obviously, the efficiency is probably not going to stick because efficiency that high does not have a tendency to stick over larger sample sizes. But good player, right? Keon Coleman, he's a rookie. They've been kind of slow playing the narrative around him as far as, hey, he's going to take a minute for sure. And I don't think you should expect Keon Coleman to come in and set the world on fire because nobody has really said that that's the kind of player he is or what they expect from him, right? Curtis Samuel is a really good number 3 or a number 2. in the NFL. That's his sample size, right? Even when Joe Brady had him and he had his best year, he was still the number 3. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson at the time, now it's Robbie Chosen, right? Were more targeted players and were higher up on the depth chart than Curtis Samuel. So you have a bunch of 2s and 3s-ish kind of players. So that, I think, can get you a better sum than that equivalent with the edge rushing group, which is why I put the edge rushing group number 1 and then wide receiver number 2 and safeties number 3, but it's a distant number 3 because of 2 factors. Number 1, if you only get normal Taylor Rapp and normal Mike Edwards and normal DeMar Hamlin, like only exhibited behavior, no improvement at all, that's fine. It's not elite, but it's fine. Also, if there's one position group I trust Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills, it's defensive backs. I'm pretty confident he could plug me in at safety and we would be okay. Right? Like, because that's the kind of defensive, best secondary coaching and development that we've historically gotten. So I don't think there's massively high ceilings there. I think Cole Bishop probably not going to be a starter right away and probably not going to be more than a package player early. But for me, that's the way I rank my quote unquote concerns.
Well, and okay, so I'm with you. But first, so when you mention D-back and you say it's kind of the least of your concerns out of that concern group, I tend to agree because you're right. Sean McDermott typically gets guys to come in and play. And as a defensive back, they end up with the best part of their career when they play under Sean McDermott. Am I wrong, though? Am I wrong in being critical of players like DeMar Hamlin? And I'm not talking about, so again, obviously there can be a lot of conversation to be had about everything in the past that's happened. I'm talking about, I've been hearing and reading and seeing that people are really feeling that DeMar Hamlin is kind of taking a step forward and he's a lot better, or if not a lot, but he's better than he has been in the past. Is that something that you've observed? Is that something that you see? I tend to find it difficult to believe that, he really wasn't somebody that was doing a good job filling in for Micah Hyde the year that Micah was out with the neck injury. And then now all of a sudden, and I get it, he's been on the team now for another year, but I just don't see him making that type of jump to all of a sudden be that he's that good of a player.
It's reasonable to assume that DeMar Hamlin has taken a step forward, and also very reasonable to assume there's a significant gap between the level of safety play that we're used to seeing in DeMar Hamlin now. And so I think if you compare, one of the things I'm going to really try to push against early on this season is I'm going to try really hard to not have the people who listen to my show have the standard of safety play be prime Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, because I think you're going to be disappointed. If that is your standard, then man, I'll tell you what, you're going to be disappointed a lot. Like, expectations minus reality equals disappointment, man. And if your expectations from your safety group are prime Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde, I think you're going to be disappointed a lot, because I think a lot of other fans would have been disappointed by that. So I think it's reasonable to assume that he could have taken a next step, being 1 year farther removed from injury and also being in the system. Like, I think that's reasonable to assume that he could take a next step, but also not be as good of a player as potentially we're used to seeing. Like, I think those two things can simultaneously exist. My problem is when we try and conflate them. We say, oh, DeMar Hamlin's next in line, right? Like, it's going to be seamless, right? He's just going to step right in. It's going to be great. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, maybe too far, right? I'm not going to, I'll be thrilled if it happens, but I agree with you in the sense that I thought DeMar Hamlin played the run really well.
Yes.
When he was playing in, and I thought he got a little bit lost sometimes in coverage. It was a little bit like DeMar Hamlin was the Joe Andreessen of safeties when he played. Watching DeMar Hamlin run the alley as a safety was a joy when he had to fill in during the time before he got injured. And it is one of the most difficult things in football to do. I've said it a million times. And now I'm biased as a former defensive back, as someone who spent meaningful time with defensive backs. Running the alley as a safety is really hard, like really hard to do well. Coming from that distance to tackle is really difficult to do. And so it's a joy to watch. Unfortunately, that's not the most important trait you can have as a safety. And so for me, I want to see DeMar Hamlin in coverage. And I don't know if I'm going to, because I don't know how many, we don't know quite how that's going to look at the very beginning of the season. We don't know if Cole Bishop's going to be kind of a box package player, if he's not going to see the field at all, if it's going to be like 3 safeties now that Matt Milano's gone. Are you going to see a lot more dime looks from the Buffalo Bills? We don't really know what that's going to look like. But for me, I think you're completely reasonable to go, I'm not sure yet. I'll believe it when I see it.
There's a few comments that I want to get to, specifically one from John. But before I do, I just want to kind of quick follow up on that. One of the things that I think about when I look at players like DeMar and others, and when I say this again, I'm not coming from a negative space, and I'm asking because I remember this specifically from you. I think it's okay sometimes for us to understand that a player is who they are. So like I think you were using Gabe Davis as an example when we had this conversation. Yeah. When someone shows you in college that this is the type of output, then they come to the NFL and they show you for several years with injury, without injury, with the quarterback fully healthy, with the quarterback not healthy, like regardless of who is around them, if they show you that this is who they are, every year they're around 800 yards, this many, it's who they are, and it's okay. It doesn't mean that every player ever develops into a superstar or a full-time starter. And I guess that's where I was coming from with the question. And I probably could have done a better job at phrasing it. So, but that's where I was coming from. So, in that sense, that's how I look at DeMar Hamlin. I think that DeMar Hamlin, I love him on special teams as well. I think DeMar Hamlin is a very, key member of that special teams unit. I know I was very upset, and I'm still upset about the last time I saw him on special teams in a Buffalo Bills uniform. But other than that, I think he does a good job there. But that's where I was going.
I think you're right. I think there's room in the NFL, and we need to understand this. There's room in the NFL for solid players who aren't studs.
Yeah.
And we need to make room in our head for them, because there's certainly room in the league for them.
And you need them on every team, because every team can't be comprised of all superstars. Who's going to do the dirty work? Who's going to,
I don't know, man. Have you seen my dynasty team? I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean,
I got you. No,
it's a stacked team, but I mean, you can kind of have all superstars if you really wanted to. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you're right. But Ryan, first, Ryan, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you. Throw a question out there, man. We can talk about it real quick. But John, I wanted to get to this. He said one thing that he thinks hasn't been highlighted in this conversation is that we have new defensive or new coordinators in general, both. And he thinks it'll be an X factor with this young team. What are your thoughts on that? Because like I said, we're talking about, young players. We don't have some leadership that we're used to having in Stephon Diggs and even Gabe Davis, if you want to go there. Defensively, Matt Milano will be there, but he's not going to be on the field. And Jordan's gone. Micah's gone. So you're missing leadership on both sides. Trey White, what are your expectations when it comes to this young team with new leadership all around?
I think it's going to be fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fun because sometimes you just need new, even if it's not necessarily better.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, if you asked me to split the hair between a Philly cheesesteak and a cheeseburger, I'm going to tell you, it depends on what my mood is. If I've had too many cheeseburgers recently, then maybe I want a cheesesteak. But if you ask me to numerically pick which one's a 10 out of 10, the answer is both of them are 10 out of 10s. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just need something new. And so there will be a quantitative benefit. Like someone will be better or worse. When you deal with things on as significant of a range as how good of an offensive coordinator you will be, somebody will be better or worse, right? Joe Brady will definitively be better or worse than Ken Dorsey, probably. I mean, what are the chances of him being exactly the same? But to me, it's a new set of rules to study. So I don't think we can look at what Joe Brady did at the end of last year and go, oh, that's the Joe Brady playbook. I think we can pretty much assume he was working from Ken Dorsey's playbook, doing the best you can. But for me, I'm going to be just interested to study new film. I mean, come on, that's fun, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, look what he's doing this. Oh, he's looking good. Oh, didn't see that before. Look at this. Like, I want to see the motions. I want to see the condensed sets. I want to see the new wrinkles. I want to see new stuff. I want to see more play action. Give me more play action. Come on. But for me, sometimes you just need a breath of fresh air. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the Bills are going to go in the Super Bowl this year, but it's an injection of energy. And I think that that's a good thing. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be an X factor in the terms of, hey, this is going to be a much better team, and that's going to be why. I mean, it might be, but I don't think it's as much X factor as it's just something different, which for me is interesting. Let's ignore the better or worse part for a second. it's just interesting, which is fun because it gets boring sometimes looking at the same old things every single week when you watch it back and watch it back and watch it back and go, oh, look,
Mhm.
here's quarters again. Oh, look, it's cover 3 buzz. Yay. Things like that.
And they were efficient at it. So when you're good at it and you continue to do the things that you're good at and win games, not much is going to change. So from that perspective, you're right. But then from a fan base perspective, I think there is a portion of the fan base, it's not all of us, but there is a portion of the fan base, like Joey's comment here, that says it feels like we've been regressing ever since 13 seconds. Did we take another step back this year? I kind of before you jump on this, I want to kind of also reframe that question and because I think on paper, right, you can look at it and obviously we've taken a step back on paper. But when it comes to um when it comes to what you're talking about with Brady, when it comes to the defense and how this team might be led and do different things, um, how much of the regression do you think will actually matter when it comes to wins losses? I know it's tough to we never really can predict wins and losses, but in the grand scheme of things, how confident are you with the direction the team is going in? With are you kind of getting where I'm going with the question?
Yeah,
I'm a
I
little
think
rusty. It's still
I
preseason for me.
think the
Sorry.
direction of the team is more difficult now. The path is more difficult than it has been.
Hmm.
Because I don't think anybody can reasonably say, I mean, there's plenty of people who are going to say the wide receiver group is better than it was last year, right? I don't think you can reasonably say that, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be a better team. But the pieces are all you really have to go on. And the division is still good. Aaron Rodgers probably not going to tear his Achilles again week 1, right? Probably not. I don't think he's going to come out and be an all-star, but he's still probably going to be better at than what they had last year because the Jets had pretty abysmal play last year.
Hmm.
So for me, it's more difficult than it was. But that doesn't necessarily mean the outcome's going to be different. It just means the path's going to be harder. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's going to battle test. Maybe you're going to really get us accelerated development from some of these younger players. And maybe someone's going to surprise us and come in and be a secret superstar. But I think the path is more difficult.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm excited because like you mentioned, things are just gonna look different. We're gonna have a new leading receiver this year. We're going to have a new, probably new leading sack getter this year and interception getter this year. There's going to be a lot of news and going to fall in love with a lot of new people. There's people that have been on this team for now the past 5, 6 years, 7 years that are not here anymore. So, it's just, I think the direction of the team, like Bruce said, is a little more difficult, but I do think you just have the opportunity. You have the opportunity to I want to see how good of a coach Sean McDermott is because I think with this change of talent, with this change of age, experience, I think Sean McDermott's experience and his expertise is going to be much more important than it's been. And that's something for me. That's something that I'm a little afraid of because he hasn't made the right decisions in the biggest moments in the playoffs. So that's something that makes me nervous. But I also feel confident with Sean McDermott being the coach versus a lot of other people. So it's just one of those things that it makes me excited to see. And then also even with what Brandon Beane is doing. Did you catch his presser today?
I did.
Did you have anything that you wanted to mention about his presser at all, or anything that because I think the way he's trying to build the team since we're moving on from everything and right now with the cap situation, I've been impressed. Some things kind of scare me that I don't feel like they're as active as I would like them to be, but I'm impressed with what he's doing. How are you, with the presser and just overall, where are you at with Brandon Beane?
With the presser, I thought he was very candid with some of the players. I think Justin Shorter, Daquan Hardy, I think some of the answers there really did give us a little bit of clarity. I think
Mhm.
Daquan Hardy was a player that a lot of us kind of thought was going to make the team. And then all of a sudden, you have a guy named Codrington who you just found out existed last week. And you go, okay, well, that's probably explains Daquan Hardy. And I think that kind of shows you that they were primarily looking at Hardy as a return man, much more so than a corner, because the explanation for why you cut him and put him on the practice squad was primarily about return. I mean, he didn't say anything about Hardy's defensive capabilities, which ironically enough was what I was focusing on because I was like, well, if he's not the returner, that's fine. But they clearly brought him in. They said that from the beginning. When they first drafted him, they said, brought him in as a returner first and foremost. And they apparently didn't move off that. So anything they saw in camp regarding Hardy didn't move off he's a return man first and foremost. Like that's primarily what he is. And they cut him for primarily that reason. And they traded for Codrington for primarily that reason. And so I thought that was interesting. I think the Justin Shorter comments were interesting as far as, hey, he just didn't develop. And that was the story on Justin Harder all through college. He just didn't develop. People had to go back to, well, he was really good in high school to give themselves like optimism for Justin Shorter. I was never a Justin Shorter truther, but there were people who were, and they had to go back to high school. Now the next team that picks him up, they're going to go back to high school too, because it's been that long since someone could say, yes, he's developing. And so I think Brandon Beane just kind of gave some clarity on some of the moves, and I always appreciate that. And for me, this offseason, I mean, I guess we'll see. I wasn't super high on Keon Coleman coming into the draft class, so that kind of taints if that's the main wide receiver ad. I like Curtis Samuel. I think he's a 2 or a 3, but I like Curtis Samuel. I like Khalil Shakir, but I don't think the volume is going to hold up. I mean, the efficiency is going to hold up when you have a lot of more volume. So for me, it's just like, I mean, I'm okay. I'm not over the moon. I'm like, yeah, banger, 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 with everything that Brandon Beane does. It feels like in the NFL nowadays, you're either in 2 camps. Number 1, everything my team does is amazing. Or number 2, everything my team does is garbage. Yeah. And so in the off season, it has a tendency to be everything my team does is amazing. And then when the games start, then it's everything my team does is garbage. Yeah, so that's just kind of the way the flip-floppy. So if you're on the everything that Brandon Beane does is amazing, then you and I are probably going to have some disagreements because I didn't feel as strongly about some of the players acquired as some other people did. So that's my overall take on the press conference and also his offseason activity.
I agree. I'm a fan of some of the moves, and then other moves are a little head scratching. So it is what it is. But look, we got a little bit of time left, not long. So I want to ask one more question before we get out of here, and then man, I'm ready for the season. I'm so happy that the Bruce exclusive is back. We had a question earlier from Ryan, and he said, is Jay Spence an official member of Overreaction Buffalo, and is Bruce starting his own show again ever? And I know the answer to both of these questions, but I'd like for you to answer yours first, and then I'll answer, and then we'll get on out of here.
Yes. The Bruce exclusive can be found right now. Go to any place you listen to your podcasts, right? Go to the Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you want, Amazon, Audible, whatever it is, and type in the Bruce exclusive. And I have my own feed, and you can listen to all the episodes. And the first one back is a musical. So I'm just kidding. It's not a musical. The opening is a musical, but it's been great to be back. I am been thrilled. And it was a weird couple of months without it. And it's good to be back, and it's good to be back doing it with these people again.
Yeah. There's obviously, like I'm sure you have, there's been a lot of offers and people reaching out, and I've thought about going to other networks and doing things, but it's not like being home with the people that you're used to doing things with, and Rumblings has been home with me for a minute. And the same thing with Overreaction. I'm not an official member of anything, I guess, but Joe and I will continue to do the Hump Day Hotline. I'm in full support of the Overreaction Network. If they want me to do anything, a new show is going down. So I guess I'm a member, but I'm with Rumblings. I got Code of Conduct coming back starting next Tuesday. I'll put that link in my Twitter feed like you all normally see. And then Chop Up is back as well as of next Wednesday with me and Sterling. I think Sterling has a new show starting Monday or third. I don't know when his is starting. There's a whole lineup. So like Bruce said, the Rumblings Network is back. And then you can still find our writing on BuffaloRumblings.com. And hey, that's that. Bruce, you got anything before we get out of here?
No, man. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's always a party, like you said. And I want to shout out my man, Joe Miller. Next week, we'll be back. He's out there drinking somewhere without me. I'm about to pour one up myself. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all enjoy your weekend. Y'all enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy it. I can't wait. Let's go Bills.